Factoring practice. Objective. Factor completely an algebraic expression by using the GCF, difference of two squares, and trinomials. Let's first find the greatest common factor, and that's the biggest factor that both of the numbers have. And in this case, the biggest factor that both of these have is the number 6. For number 2, it'll be 5. For number 3, it looks like it's going to be 2. And for number 4, it'll be 8. All right, let's take a look at getting the greatest common monomial. All right, in this problem, we want to take the greatest common factor from both of these terms, and that'll be 3. So if I take a 3 out, and then I'll be left with 2x plus 1. Over here, it looks like I'll be able to get an 8 out and also an x. And what we have left will be 3x and then minus 1. Now you can always check your work by multiplying back again. Over here it looks like it'll be 6. And over here it's going to be 2x I can get. And I'll have an x left and a plus 4. Over here it looks like I can get a 2 out. Greatest common factor here looks like I'm going to be able to get a 5 and an x. So I'll be left with 2x and then plus 7. Last one, I'm going to be able to get a 5 out, an x out, and a y. And so what we'll have left is a 2 and an x left, minus, and then if you take a 5 out of here, that'll be a 3. You've taken an x out and a y out, and you'll be left with a y. Factoring the difference of two squares. This is not a trinomial. But what you should notice is that this number is a perfect square, and this number is a perfect square. And so what we do is we split up the a squared, a and a, and split up the 6, put a plus in one and a minus in the other. And that's because when you actually FOIL them, multiply first, the outer will be negative 6a, the inner will be positive 6a, which will cancel. That's why you don't see a middle term. And then the last terms are going to be negative 6. So our factoring will look like this. Since it's a difference of perfect squares, I'm going to split up the 1, 1 and 1, split up the x, x and x, and put a plus in one and a minus in the other. Again, difference of perfect squares. I'm going to split up the x, split up the 9 into its perfect squares, plus 1, minus. This one is prime. It's not a difference of two squares. We cannot factor it. This one again, split up the x's, the 25 plus and a minus. And again, these are perfect squares still. So I'm going to have 3y and 3y. That'll make the 9y squared a 4 and a 4. Make a plus in one and a minus in the other. Last one, 2x and 2x, a 5 and a 5, a plus and 1 and a minus. And again, it's a difference of two squares, so not a sum of two squares, but a difference. All right, let's take a look at factoring perfect square trinomials. And what's happening is you're going to have a perfect square here, and the square root of that is 7, and you'll always know that this is double the square root. And so this is a perfect square right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to split up the x, and since the square root of this is 4, we're going to split it up to 4 times 4, and I want you to notice that this is the sum of 4 plus 4. So this is going to be plus and plus. And when we FOIL, the outer and the inner will add up to 8x. Again, perfect square, 8, 8, x, x, and we want to get a negative 16, so both of these will have to be minuses. A negative times a negative is a positive. Again, this is a perfect square, and the square root is 6, and this is double that. So this is a factoring a perfect square trinomial, 6 and 6, and we're going to want to use a plus because everything's positive here. Perfect square trinomial, 5, 5, A, and each one of them is going to be the same. So in each case, the two factors are exactly the same. That's why we call it a perfect square trinomial, because we can then write it this way and just say square and like this. All right, I'm going to do the last one, and again, this is a perfect square and this is a perfect square. So this is going to be 4y, 4y, 1, 1. Everything's positive, so everything will be positive here. And we can write this as a square, and that's a perfect square trinomial. Okay, factoring trinomials, there's two types. One that end with a positive and one that end with a negative. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to split up our x's. All right, and then we want to think about two numbers that multiply to be 8 but add up to 6. And that always happens whenever you have a plus. You want the factors here to add up to this number. And it just so happens that 4 and 2 do multiply to be 8, and they do add up to 6. And so everything's going to be plus because we have plus all the way across. All right, we're going to split up the c's. And right here, since this is plus, we want to look for two factors that add up to this number. And that would be 2 times 3, and everything will be positive. So whenever you have this plus here, you're trying to find two factors that add up to the middle one. And let's go ahead and we'll have y and y. And since this is positive, think of two factors that multiply to 14 that add up to 9, and that'll be 7 and 2. But in this case, they'll both be minuses because they have to add up to -9. And then we'll have x and x. And two numbers that make 16 that add up to 10 are 8 and 2. And they'll both be minuses because these two factors have to add up to this one because they're ending with a positive here. A, and 27, that's 9 times 3. Those add up to 12, and so both of them will be positive all the way through. And split up the x's. And what makes 24? We can say 8 times 3. We can also say 6 times 4. So 24 is 6 times 4. It's also 12 times 2, and I think that's what I want because I want it to add up to 14. So 12 and 2, and they both have to be minuses because they have to add up to this -14. All right, now this is a minus sign, so the strategy is different. Now you want to find two factors whose difference is going to be that middle term. So we're going to split up the x, and now we're looking for two factors that when their difference is going to be 1, and that's going to be 3 and 2. You can see that the difference between 3 and 2, if you take 3 and 2 and you subtract them, you're going to get a 1. Now you want a -1, so you want more negatives and fewer positives. So you want this to be -3 x plus 2x. You want it to add up to -1x, and so we have it here. All right, and we're going to split up the y's. Okay, we're looking at 18. We're looking at two factors that when you subtract them, they'll make 3. And so 9 times 2 won't work. How about 6 times 3? 6 times 3, their difference is 3. So 6 and 3. One of them is going to be positive, one's going to be negative because you're looking for a difference. You want more positive, so you put that here and then here. Okay, we're going to split up the b. We're looking for two factors that make 18, and their difference is 7. And so I think I'm going to use 9 and 2. 9 and 2. We want more positives, so plus, and then this will be minus. All right, let's take a look at A. We're looking for two numbers that make 56, and that's what, 8 times 7. And 8 times 7, the difference is going to be a 1 here. So it's 8 and 7. You want more positives than negatives. And last one, C and C, you're looking at 12, where the difference is going to be 4. So you're going to want to use 6 times 2. 6 and 2, more negatives than positives. Okay, now the last one is factoring when you have a leading coefficient that is not 1. So in this case, you got to work a little harder. First we want to split up the 2x, so it's 2x and x. And then we want to split up the 3, and there's only one way to split up 3, and that's 3 times 1. And since this is a minus, you want the difference to be 5. So I want to create a 6. So I'm going to put 3 here so I can create the 6x. And then I'm going to put the 1 here so I can create the 1x. And so we can say 6x and 1x are going to make 5. We want more negatives, so I'm going to put a negative here and a positive here. All right, I'm going to split up the 3x squared. And you're going to want to use some factors that make 8, probably 4 and 2. But you want to put 4 and 2 in such a place that the difference, because there's a minus sign here, the difference will be 10. So I'm going to put 4 here and 2 here, because that's going to create a 12x. This is going to create a 2x. And the difference between 12x and 2x is 10x. I want more positives, so I'm going to put a plus here. And I'm going to put a minus here. I'm going to put 2y and y, and there's only one thing I can do to split up 7, and that's 7 times 1. Since this is a plus, I'm going to look for a sum that makes 15. So I'm going to put a 7 here and a 1 here, and that's because I want to create this 14y and 1y, and that sum will be 15, and everybody's positive here. Next one, I'm going to split up 7a and a, and I need to split up the 4. I can either do 2 times 2 or 4 times 1, and I think I'm going to do, remember I'm looking for a sum that'll make 11. So I'm going to put a 4 here and a 1 here, because this will be 7a, this will be 4a, and that'll create 11a. That sum will be 11. Everything has to be negative, because I'm looking for a sum of negative numbers that make negative 11a. Last one, I have 5a or 5n and an n, and I'm looking to, this plus means that the sum has to add up to 17, and so I'm going to put a 3 here to create this 15, and I'm going to put a 2 here to create the 2n, and 15 and 2n do make 17, and everybody's positive.